It's truly an honor and a privilege to be here. Congratulations, you graduates. This is the end. The end is here. And you parents, this is the end. No, actually, there's grad school after this. And friends and family members and kids and everyone here. It is truly a joy and such a privilege to have this chance to address you and wish you well and to give you just a little smattering of what God has laid on my heart for this day. Will you pray with me? Gracious God, either through me or in spite of me, speak your word to your people now. And the words of my mouth and meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight. Lord, you are our rock and our redeemer. Amen. President, distinguished faculty, God bless you all as you have led folks into this final moment of graduation and moving on, and we call it commencement. And at the time of baccalaureate, it is truly a time to look to God. And the title of my sermon is, What Does the Fox Say? And if you're someone who does YouTube, you might have heard this song that went viral this year. It's gotten something like 400 million hits. It is performed by some guys in Norway and has this catchy little tune that repeatedly asks this curious question, what does the fox say? And throughout the song, the verses give a number of suggestions. Ring, ding, 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 and fracka, 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 cow, and hatty, 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 ho. But the singer keeps pressing on. I want to know what the fox says. In one part he sings, the secret of the fox is an ancient mystery. Somewhere deep in the woods, I know you're hiding. What is your sound? Will you ever know? It will always be a mystery. What do you say? And on this baccalaureate day, I think it's more important to ask, what does God say? And like the Norwegian singer Yrvis who wrote this song, you might be thinking that God is some ancient mystery, hiding deep in the woods. And you might even wonder if it's worth asking about God as you graduate. Maybe organized religion hasn't been much of a place to find your answers. Or maybe you've been hurt by it. Or maybe it doesn't seem relevant. But just maybe God is bigger than denominations and church buildings and pews, and God has quite a few words to say to us today. So, what does God say? Well, from Ezekiel, we hear the Old Testament lesson about a very strange account of God breathing life into old, dry bones. Kind of an amazing Halloween sort of story with skeletons standing up and coming alive. Recently, some microbes collected from the bones of 67-million-year-old Tyrannosaurus rex dinosaur was sent into space. Isn't that cool? And this microbe and 48 others are being tested in a zero-gravity environment to see if they might behave differently. Maybe we can learn something. Maybe, perhaps, dinosaur microbes can come alive again. And we can have like a Jurassic Park happening right here, just because of our space technology. But what God says to all the dry bones is this: there is hope. Hope for death, from life, from death, from resurrection from the grave. Just as spring has finally brought trees and grass and flowers back to life after this brutal winter we've had, there is a God that brings resurrection and life that goes on and on and on forever. This year, I understand you experienced the passing of the beloved teacher, Dr. Rebecca Butler, who taught in the music department. You just heard a wonderful song, and she taught her student how to play. And she touched you, surely, by her talents and her hearts. And I'm here to say that death is not the last word for this beloved teacher, or the last word for you or I as we face mortality. I like how the bulletin said, in memory and in honor of Dr. Butler. God is the God of the living, not the God of the dead. And we live on in the lives of people who we have touched, but also in life eternal. That's a sure promise. Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, yet shall they live. There's also resurrection of our dead hopes and dreams. I graduated from your arch nemesis, Lebanon Valley College. The college you kind of compete with. Anyway, this was a long time ago when dinosaurs roamed the earth. And I was a music major, and I was going to teach music and play piano in church and marry a minister, and I had it all figured out. And so I actually got a teaching job when you weren't supposed to get teaching jobs, and I got to teach school, and I loved it. And I taught little kids ta-ta, ti-ti-ta, and music, and little orff instruments and all that stuff. But then I had a slight problem. In the midst of my perfect world, I started losing my voice. And when you're a music teacher, you have to have a voice. And by Friday every week, there was nothing left but just a little rasp. So I was really having a problem. I went to an eye, ear, nose, and throat doctor, and he looked down my throat and he said, "You have nodules on your vocal cords, and we can scrape them off. But people like you shouldn't be teaching. You really would keep having this over and over again." And it was like a bomb just dropped in that room when he said that. You shouldn't be teaching. I had prepared. I had gone to college. I got my degree. I had my car, my apartment, my house, and my cute little dresses. And all of a sudden, I didn't have anything. Death of my dream. Death of my neat little world. What did God say? Well, God said, "Well, I wanted you to be a minister all along. So now, get on with it." And so I found resurrection, and I went off to seminary and became a pastor. And what do you know? I got my voice back. And I followed the real call that God had for my life all along. You see, friends, sometimes plan B is really plan A. Sometimes you have to die to your dream and what you thought was all going to be right. You have to die to that to really live to what God's plan is for you. You graduates may be facing some kind of personal or professional death right now. Some disappointments in the job market. Some rejection letters from grad school. Some closed doors. But look for the resurrection. God has not brought you this far to leave you without hope. Dry bones will live again. That's what God says. Now in the book of James, it talks about doing good works, not just talking about it. Amen? Amen. This is really important. We get tired of hearing people talk. It's when people do what they're supposed to do, it really counts. And this is like the major theme of the book of James, but it's also the theme of every religion in the world. Be you Protestant, Catholic, Jew, Muslim, Sikh, Baha'i, Seeker, religious, spiritual but not religious, whatever you see yourself as. Compassion for the poor, caring about those who have nothing, is something that all of us can agree is an important part of living out our humanity and being a part of this planet and living a good life. When we do that, we experience an enormous amount of joy and purpose in our life as well. Real, deep, and abiding satisfaction does not come from getting a lot of money or a lot of nice things or even having a lot of nice friends. It looks like it does, but it really doesn't. Having a lot of money is like a mirage in the water, and you're driving along on a hot day and you see it looks like water up ahead on the road, but when you get there, it's gone. A mirage. That's what money is. We think, oh, if we just had one more savings account, or this car, or that job, or this material thing, we'll be really happy. But the funny thing is that when you get to it, you're not very happy. You have to get one more thing, and one more thing, and it's like drinking salt water. Material things just make you want more. It never really satisfies. With money as your goal, you always want to have more stuff, and you buy storage bins and stuff, and your stuff. It's just an empty thing. But to have real joy in your life is to give yourself away. Sounds counterintuitive, but it really is true. Help people. Give your life to people. Give your life to a cause that makes a difference in this world. Especially help people who are poor. Do the works of mercy and compassion, and you'll never be without the things you really need in this life. I mean, how much stuff do you really need? But you'll never be without deep and abiding joy if you do. This January, I visited South Africa with a group of 18 high school seniors from all over the Northeast. It was an exciting experience where I not only experienced the culture of South Africa, but the culture of 18-year-olds. Oh my. They were like doing Facebook to each other in the same room. It was amazing, but we saw some incredible things in South Africa. None of us will ever be the same. We went to Johannesburg, where and terrible discrimination against peoples. But it's still going on. The government there will not allow refugees from Zimbabwe to come into their borders, but the church can. And in 2010, there was a terrible uprising in Zimbabwe where thousands of people running for their lives came across the border into South Africa, and they found refuge in the church, a Dutch Reformed church, an old church. And there they have been living since 2010. 1,200 people are sleeping there every night. Can you imagine the way this church has changed? 1,200 people in 4 bathrooms. It's just incredible. But you'd think this would be like the creepiest, horriblest place you'd ever seen. And I gotta admit, it was pretty terrible on a lot of levels, especially the 4-bathroom part. But amazing part to me were the workers there. There were hundreds of relief workers coming in to help every day. And you'd think they were like tired and mad at the world, but they weren't. They were energized. They were giving food and medical attention and job training and education. And they pretty much volunteered. They weren't getting paid anything. But they were the happiest people I've ever seen in my life. They know something. When you give yourself away, that's when you're truly blessed. Jesus says, when you do something compassionate for the least of these, my brethren and sister, you have done it unto me. He really means that. And that kind of life will give you meaning and purpose that no monetary thing will ever bring. That's what God says. Finally, the passage from Matthew. This reminds us that if we have faith the size of a mustard seed, and it's really a tiny little seed, that nothing will be impossible for you. Now, we know that not every prayer we send up to God is answered the way we want. When I was a kid, I used to pray for a pony, and it never showed up. And I'm sure some of you have prayed for tests. I just know that. And maybe you didn't get such a good grade after all. And we know that bad things happen to good people, and that life has sorrow and disappointment. And there's not just a little bit of disillusionment when you pray, and something bad happens anyway. So you might ask, what good is this God thing anyway? What good is prayer if it doesn't get answered? What kind of God will let a kid die? What kind of God is running this place? Well, that kind of God is a plenty good God, because impossible things are happening every day. I can attest to that. And very, very often when bad things do happen, there's a God out there who's weaving it all together for good, somehow making good come from bad, in this world and in the next world. See, sometimes we have to wait for the next world to see how it all develops apart, but for sure, God is the master weaver of our trials and our sorrows. But the point here is that you have to have faith. Faith means believing where you can't see. I mean, if you could see it, it wouldn't be faith. If you had it in the bag, it wouldn't show any good on your part. But faith means trusting in a God who's going to be weaving all the stuff together for good somehow. And that is really the thing that gives me joy all the time, is seeing people that folks think are nobodies turn out to be somebodies, and things that think are terrible turn out to be the best thing that could have ever happened. I've been reading this book called David and Goliath, Underdogs, Misfits, and the Art of Battling Giants. It's written by Malcolm Gladwell. If you need some summer reading, read this book. It's a great book. And he recalls the story of a man named David Bowes, who had become one of the world's greatest option traders on Wall Street as just a young man. He had eyes to see that his long struggle with dyslexia was really his greatest gift. David said, the one trait a lot of dyslexic people I know is that by the time we get out of college, our ability to deal with failure is very highly developed. And so we look at most situations and see much more of the upside than the downside. Because we are so accustomed to the downside, it doesn't faze us. I wouldn't be where I am today without my dyslexia. He is the president of Goldman Sachs. Nothing is impossible with God if you have faith. No matter the roadblocks, the failures, or the personal abuse, or the past experiences that have hurt you deeply, with faith, God can work it out for good. God can use all those things to make impossible good things happen in this world. Believe it. And when you do, look out. There's going to be mountains moving all over the place. Let's That's what God says. In conclusion, I'd like to remind you, if you've seen this YouTube thing, if you haven't, you got to go and get on and watch it. But at the end of this, what does the fox say? There is a fox. A fox does appear, right? It's like a little character dressed up like a fox, but there's a fox. And this fox is singing ba-ba-ba-boo-boo-boo-ba-ba. And he's not silent at all. This fox is actually talking. But while he's talking, the whole time he's talking, the singer is saying, I want to know. He's like he's oblivious. He's not even noticing the fox is right there talking to him. He just keeps crooning away, I want to know, I'll never know. There he is, right there. That's God. The same is true of God. God is singing to you, class of 2014. He's been with you since the day you were born. And he says, I love you. I made you just how you are. Even the things you don't like about yourself. I have a future with a hope for you. So don't be like the singer, never seeing the fox who's standing right there. God is with you. Believe it, live it, move mountains with it. Class of 2014, may you have a wonderful, prosperous, and joy-filled future. And I stand on tiptoe, waiting to see the things you will bring to this world in the years to come. Thanks be to God. Amen.